So one of the conversations I've been in around around those issues about how to protect trans women in prison is in the States. There's I can find the link later. In the States, there's a prison that's specifically for LGBTQ men. If the question you're asking is, if you're saying that we have to take trans women's safety into account, I absolutely agree. And I also agree with you that the default is to, women have to suck it up. And I also think that it's difficult to transform men's prisons in the short and medium term to stop making them such dangerous places. That absolutely needs to happen as well, but nobody's even really talking about that. So I just think that that's the point of that example, is to actually say, some people in the States thought about this differently and came up with a different solution. So gay men and gender non-conforming men and trans women have a place where they can go. There should be services for trans women and trans men and non-binary people and everybody. And there's no reason why those services can't be set up alongside female-only services. But that's actually not what's happening. What's happening is the female-only services are being removed.
So is the problem that men need the service and their service isn't available?
Sorry, could you say that again? I didn't hear.
So is the problem that men need that service and that service isn't available to them?
Well, I would absolutely assume that there's been an increase in the need for services for trans women and non-binary males, just because of an increase in people identifying that way.
So do you think they're being assaulted more because they're trans now?
No, I think it's a specialist service that's needed, and because there's more people self-IDing, there's going to be more need. So I have no idea if more males are being assaulted or not. And obviously there hasn't been good support for men in the past that have been sexually assaulted. And I don't even have a problem with Rape Crisis providing dual services. I think that's completely fine too, although I do think because Rape Crisis was such a strong feminist grassroots organisation here, it is a loss, I think, if they're going to dual services. But
so would you say that, and just making the argument for the other side, do you think that trans women are using female services because there isn't another service, or do you think it's part of some sort of fetish?
I think it's both, depending on the trans person.
So,
well, hang on a minute. Depends what you mean by fetish. I think that my understanding of what's happened in the UK is that. So I think there's three things going on. One is, trans women just need specialist services, and there's not many available, and they're more likely to get that at from a women's service than they are anywhere else. I think the second thing is that there are trans women who want their womanness affirmed, and I definitely think that was the case of the woman that the trans woman, the trans-identified male who took Vancouver rape relief to court because they wanted to be a counsellor and they wanted to be able to counsel women. That to me is just, there's something wrong. Yeah, there's something really wrong there, because if you actually care about women who are rape survivors, then you don't actually do that. And then the third, where it's a fetish, I don't, and I'm sure that's happening in places too, given that with the whole AGP thing.
They have historically tried to set up, services for men, because historically men have not tried, gay men, for example, where the perpetrator is a male, have not tried to access domestic and rape, or at least domestic.
Yeah, Exactly. Why would they, though?
Non-issue as far as I'm concerned. Now, when men's rights activism came about, they said, oh, men need these services too. They created them. They had no fucking clients, okay? So there are certainly men who need these services. The perpetrator is a male. So what is the actual problem here? Is the problem that the services don't exist for men or trans women, okay, in the first place? Are they highly likely to be victimised? Therefore, we just throw them in with the women? Because it sounds to me like they actually are statistically highly likely to be victimised, but their experience of that is different, so they need different services and different types of support away from women, because obviously that creates a conflict.
I think also it's worth differentiating between the groups of women that understand and care about other people as well as themselves, and the groups of women that are going pretty much hard out against trans people.
I think I don't want to speak for Liv, but if she's not going to talk, I'll just give you my take, I guess.
Do it, you'll force her to talk, Dara.
I think the discerning feature is standing up for women's rights, which is obviously important, but not using that as a platform for hatred. And that was my basic argument. And I think for Liv, her frustration is that those women with the loudest voices, like Kelly J. Keane, I guess on a more localized level, Catherine Deves, and now Moira Deeming, I don't understand. Well, I do understand because it lends itself to virality. But I don't understand why those loud and proud women can't be loud and proud women without the hate. And the answer to my naive, idealistic question is because you don't mobilize people without fear. Everyone knows that. The number one factor in mobilizing public opinion is people will react better, I guess, when it comes to activism and movement, when it comes to losing something rather than gaining something.
What I'm concerned at is the hyperbole with the cultural war is if someone doesn't know anything and hears cultural war rhetoric happening, there's men everywhere in women's spaces, they look up these services, and the services like the one in Tasmania, of course, says we respect your gender identity. What they, I think, mean is we respect that you're a trans man. They don't mean we respect that you're a trans woman. But you may not know that if you're if you're not familiar. So you might just think, oh my gosh, there's men in this DV service. I feel like they're not helping themselves out if they're not clear on some website or some exemption list that they are single sex.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of bullshit, basically, around, and people aren't thinking critically. When we say we are trans inclusive, it doesn't mean male inclusive necessarily. I don't have the research skills to decipher what's what. Come on, Bob. Between say the trans inclusive services, and I think it's actually a good thing if they say that, because there's lots of young people who, like females, who would identify as trans, and they want to be treated with respect, right? It can go both ways because that's the world we live on, right? Whether it's morally right or wrong, or you disagree with whether it's right or wrong, is irrelevant to the legal issues and how our system works and tries to balance those problems. And the truth is that trans women have suicided and died and been raped in male prisons, for example. Yes, I understand the argument that that's not the women's problem, but it is a social issue that we should, in my opinion, understand why there is an argument to include them in women's prison.